leader of your life, then that's your future. He's talking about your and my future when he talks about this feast in Matthew chapter 8. Your true older brother will carry you home. And when he sees you coming up the drive, the father will run to you, and he will fall on his neck before you, and he will kiss you, and he will give you a place of honor at his banqueting table. And you will enjoy a sense of well-being and peace that you've never ever enjoyed before. Emotional well-being, physical well-being, and yes, spiritual well-being too. And you will partake of the greatest feast in the history of humanity. Until then, and as a foretaste of that ultimate feast, Jesus gave us the Lord's Supper, also called communion, also called Eucharist. And the Lord's Supper works in two ways. Number one, the Lord's Supper is a time of intimacy with Christ. It's a time of intimacy with Christ. In the parable of the prodigal son, the father exclaims, "This son of mine who was dead is alive again." And what we're about to celebrate is the fact that the supreme son who was dead is alive again. So we come to the table to experience intimacy with Christ. And Jesus' exile ultimately took him to Calvary, where he was crucified, died, and was buried. But knowing what lay ahead of him, he gathered his disciples around him, and he instituted the Lord's Supper, and he told them these words, "Do this in remembrance of me." And we remember Jesus through this feast, because everything about it represents something significant to us about our relationship with him. The bread that we will hold represents his body that was given, that experienced suffering for us. The cup represents his shed blood for us. The sacrament, the meal, represents the sacrifice that he made so that we could be home again with the Father. Really, it's stronger than do this in remembrance of me. It's more like do this in connection, in connectivity with me. Do this in connection with me. So though you can't see Jesus as you come to the table, you can't see Jesus at the meal that we're going to be celebrating today, through this meal, through Lord's Supper, he's available for an intimacy with us that is unavailable to us in any other format. So number one, this is a time of intimacy with Christ. Number two, Lord's Supper is a time of intimacy with your new community here at River City Church. Rocker Billy Idol may well have been able to dance all by himself, but no one, and I repeat, no one, feasts all by themselves. Right? You can't have a feast of one. It's just not normal. It just doesn't work. Feasting is communal in nature. And so it shouldn't surprise any of us to learn that Lord's Supper is to be celebrated communally in the new community under Christ Jesus. And we live in a culture where the interests and desires of individuals take precedence over the family or over the broader community. And as a result, a high percentage of your neighbors and mine want to achieve spiritual growth without losing their independence to a church or any organized institution. Last night I was at a wedding. I did a wedding yesterday afternoon, and we had a reception. I was at a table with some people, and a young couple from Mississauga. Interesting, stimulating conversation with them. Spiritual people, but they don't see the need to be part of a church community. They have no interest in being part of a church. Their thinking would probably be summarized in a statement like this: I'm spiritual, I'm just not religious. Or, I like Jesus, I just don't like Christianity or churches. You see, many people who are spiritually searching, maybe some of you here today, feel they've been hurt by the church. And so you might hear them say, as I frequently do, why would I go to church? Church is full of hypocrites, or judgmental people, or self-righteous people. I appreciate the way that Tim Keller responds to these statements. He says this: true, churches can be filled with older brother types, yet staying away from them simply because they have older brothers is just another form of self-righteousness. Besides that, there's no way you'll be able to grow spiritually apart from a deep involvement in a community of other believers. Fact. It's possible to have a wonderful, dynamic experience, personal experience of Jesus Christ that will never impact the way you live your life. It's possible to have this great experience, dynamic experience with Jesus Christ personally that never impacts your life afterwards, because you choose not to be involved in community. You choose to live as an individual when this is a communal thing. In fact, I'd go so far as to say this. The degree to which your salvation impacts your life is directly proportional to the degree to which you participate in this new community. The degree to which your salvation impacts your life is directly proportional to the degree to which you link into this community with Christian sisters and brothers. You've got to share life together. You've got to eat together. You've got to laugh together. You've got to cry together. You've got to talk together. Confess sins to one another. Learn from and study with one another. Be accountable to one another. Consult one another. You know, sometimes I get asked, why don't we have Lord's Supper or communion more often? And I would love to. I really would. But you can have a taste. And I was just thinking about this morning as I was preparing for the service. You can have a taste of what we're going to experience today when you fellowship with each other in community. And I was thinking, I wonder what feeds the Christian heart, the gospel Christian heart more. Personal devotions alone in your closet or in your bedroom or wherever you do your devotions, or gathering with other believers over a meal, fellowshipping with them. I wonder. It's food for thought. You guys can come to your own conclusion. But I wouldn't be surprised if many of you, just the way that God has wired you, would find your faith grow at a more rapid rate and to a deeper level if you just took time to have people to your home for meals and went to their homes when they invited you. I think it might grow more that way than when you're sitting alone in isolation. Some of you are still not so familiar with this book, and you try to make sense of it in isolation. I think that you might grow more if you spend more time in community. So let what we're about to do together this morning by partaking of this meal translate into your uncompromising commitment to immerse yourself in this new community. Immerse yourself in this community. This should be a review for most of you, but it bears repeating. All the wonderful insights that we've been learning in this series on Luke chapter 15 over the past 7 weeks, these aren't intended for individual edification. These are intended for the building of a gospel community. We are trying to build a gospel community at River City Church. You cannot show the world who Jesus is except through community. The voice becomes that much louder. The image that's projected is that much higher a resolution. Now, before we partake of this meal, I'd like to give you an idea of how this is going to go. Because we've never done communion in a movie theater before. This is a brand new experience for us. And also, with it being the peak of flu season and H1N1 and all that, we've taken extra precautions for safety and so forth, as we should. So let me just walk through how this is going to go. We've got 2 tables set up. There's going to be one there, and there'll be one at the back of this aisle. And the juice you'll find in individual cups, so no one will be handling the juice except for you. And this is a first. The bread is in individual cups as well, so no one will touch the bread except for you as well. All right? Now, when I indicate that it's time, those of you who are willing and who feel ready to partake of this meal will go to the back, and we're going to start with the outside rows, so the 2 aisles on the outside. And why don't we start by having the people in the front rows go up first. And as you go to the top of the stair, follow the side of the stair that's closest to the aisle that you're sitting in. So for you guys, it'll be this side. Go up single file, take the elements, and then come back down the other way. And so you guys can just follow each other up. All right? And then after the outside aisles have received the elements, then you guys in the middle will just kind of divide you. Use the projector as a dividing line. I guess if your family's kind of divided, then go with your family too. But again, use the side of the aisle for going up that's closest to